Welcome to this episode of Let's Be Civil. Today I have Nick Feller joining me on Let's Be Civil. Nick Feller received his Bachelor of Science degree in Civil Engineering from Valparaiso University in 2014. After working almost 3 years designing cold-form metal framing systems, he took a position as a project engineer for a structural engineering firm in Indianapolis. He earned his professional engineer's license in 2018 and plans to take the exam to become a licensed structural engineer. Hey, everybody. We're back at the Let's Be Civil podcast. And my guest today is Nick Feller. Nick and I know each other from when I was a faculty member at Valparaiso University. And I'm trying to remember, were you there as a freshman and I was there? Or
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
we spent the 4 years I was at Valpo were the 4 years you were at Valpo.
That is correct.
And then you went off to work and I went off to work someplace else. So we came and we left at the same time and did a variety of things together while we were there. So why don't you give us a little bit of a background of what got you to Valpo and then what you've been doing since then? And,
Sure. So my original connection to Valpo is family related. So I had both my mother and my uncle attend Valparaiso for a couple of years back in the late 70s, early 80s during the big party years then. And then, my interest in engineering began early in high school, I would say. And early on when I was looking at schools, some of the big names were really the eye-catching ones like the Illinois and the Purdue's of the world. And I ended up going between Valpo and Kansas State, I think were my top two choices. And eventually I picked Valpo because of the close proximity to where I grew up in the western suburbs of Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
So I attended Valparaiso, and I think pretty much right away my intention was to go into civil engineering. I don't think I really had too much of, I wasn't really looking into the mechanical or the electrical backgrounds like they offered while I was there. So yeah, I started there in September of 2010, and I graduated in May of 2014. I got my engineering intern license right before graduating, and then I got a job with Clark Dietrich pretty much right out of school, which was a delegated design company for metal framing. So I was there designing mainly non-load, curtain wall framing and load-bearing stud framing.
Sure.
I was there for about almost 3 years, but at about the 2-year mark, I kind of realized this wasn't really what I learned in school, and this was not really what I wanted to be doing for the rest of my life. So about early 2017, I applied for a job where I'm at now, Lynch Harrison Brumlevy down in Indianapolis, Indiana, and that's where I've been working since. And here we do more of your standard structural engineering with mid-level rise buildings, schools, apartment buildings, that sort of nature. And I've been here since then. I've been happy working here, and since then I got my professional engineering license in October of 2018. So
congratulations.
Thank you.
Even though it's a little bit, after the fact, but still.
That's all right. I was just happy to get it done, on the first try. I was scared of. I was in a very talented class, and I was worried I was going to be one of the few people, if the only person to not pass either the FE and or the PE on the first go. So I'm happy that I got those both under my belt.
Yeah, excellent. I'm
I
proud of
have.
you. Yeah.
I appreciate that. And no, it's been a journey. I'm kind of on the fence right now about maybe potentially pursuing the SC exam, but I'm
Sure.
not planning on doing that for at least a couple more years if I want to get a few more years of experience under my belt before.
Did you do any kind of a review class for the PE exam, or
I
did
did
you? Okay.
no, I pretty much just studied on
Studied.
my own. I started studying about 6 months in advance before the exam, and I kind of took it easy for the first couple of months, maybe doing like a once a week kind of thing after work, spending an hour or two kind of going through, kind of trying to start getting some of the topics reviewed through my head, whether it being the general portion of the exam, which is the first half, or the structure heavy portion of the exam, which was the second half. And
Right.
I think I think I found a nice balance of studying both areas appropriately, because half the exam is the general area of civil engineering, where that's if you went to a good school, like I was fortunate to go to Valparaiso, and the first half of the exam should be pretty straightforward. It's a lot of the easier concepts from each of the areas of civil engineering, whereas the second half of the exam definitely even caught me off guard a little bit. The first 10 minutes of the exam, I was looking at the first 10 questions, and I think I answered 2 of them on the first try. And I'm like, oh my goodness, did I not even study enough at this point? I'm panicking and kind of try to hit the brakes a little bit. And fortunately, I was able to kind of calm down a little bit and start getting my mind going. And I think, well, obviously I did enough to pass the exam. I know I did well in the first half. Who knows how well I did in the second half? The important thing is I was able to get my professional engineering license.
And you know, when you're a student, you always want to know what you got for, a grade on an exam or whatever. And this is one of those times you don't really care. Pass, fail,
you don't care. And they're not going to tell you if you don't pass it. If you do pass it, they're not going to tell you. They'll tell you if you don't pass it.
Right. But yeah, all you want to know is that you passed, and the rest doesn't matter anymore.
Oh, believe me, I think when I found out, I was right here in my office, and I had my boss sitting back behind me, and I had another group of people in the conference room. I opened up that email, and I think I screamed or jumped up or something. They're all freaking out, like, what the heck's going on? Is the building coming down or something?
Right.
So,
well, I recall a little stretch of time. I guess it probably would have been in that 2017 frame when you were thinking about doing something else, that somebody was trying to convince you to move to Texas.
Yes, you were. That's right.
Yeah. Because you had sent me a note and said, hey, I'm thinking about maybe doing something different. And I said, think about coming to Texas and hanging out with me if you want to do something like that. So if you want to go down the graduate school path, that invitation is there. We've got a new program, so we're doing some. I would say, when it's over and done with, it's going to be some pretty cool stuff. So if the thought ever crosses your mind about going to graduate school, you know where to find me. So I know you won't hesitate to shout, get a hold of me. So
absolutely.
Yep. So tell me.
Sorry about that.
No, tell me a little bit about.
Did you lose me?
No. I'm depending on who I speak to. There've been some hiccups. So.
Can you hear me, John?
Yep.
Okay, I'm having trouble hearing you. I'm sorry.
Okay. Did it just change, or?
There we go. Okay. No, I was getting a call from someone in the office.
Gotcha.
Close them out really quick. So.
Yep.
Sorry about that.
So you're now 6 years into your career, which blows you away, doesn't it?
I can't believe it.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Right. Right.
6 years since the
Yeah.
actually it's right around 6 years at this point where we did the canoe competition at U of I.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like this week or something. It would have been 6 years. That's
I'll,
crazy.
I'll tell you, I've thought about the teams around the country, and how disappointing it has to be for the students to have
Oh yeah.
been working, on that, and you can't get it back. I mean,
No.
that's the thing, is you can't get it back.
No.
But it was fun. I mean, we had a good time.
Oh, it was great.
One thing that I wanted to talk with you a bit about is making that career change.
Yes.
It's not an unusual thing for recent graduates to take a job that they might have for, I mean, in worst case scenarios, I've had students that have come back as early as 6 months into their first job and say, geez, I didn't realize that, it just wasn't a good fit for me, kind of a thing. Even some that have, hey, I've been here for 15 years, but I just need a change, sort of thing. So it's not unusual. What kind of played into the thought that now at 2 years, I wanted to move on?
I think, well, there were a few factors that led to me ultimately making that decision. I think one of the things that I remember, one of the big things I remember from one of the professors at Valparaiso saying, you really need to give it 2 years to understand what you're doing. 6 months just isn't a long enough period of time to understand what the job entails. You really need 2 years to determine if this really is what you want to be doing.
Right.
And I think it was around that 2 year mark where I really had that epiphany or eye-popping moment of like, this just isn't what I want to be doing, and I want to be doing more actual structures. I'm doing more of the areas that we studied while I was at Valparaiso. So that just, and another thing was just the living. I ended up, my first job was about 25 minutes away from Valparaiso, which I think at the beginning was kind of an appealing factor to me, in that I had all those connections at Valpo, and that I would be so close to Valpo for to see people. And it just, over time, things happen, people move on from Valparaiso, obviously, and move on from any place.
Right.
And it gets to the point where I was like, well, I'm kind of by myself right now, and I'm paying too much for rent. I'm not thrilled with the job right now. So, and so I knew someone who was another engineer at Valparaiso, who was down in Indianapolis, and I had I'd met with him a few times down here, and he really seemed to like the area a lot, and kind of gave me the kind of like, hey, you should move down here and consider moving down there. And so I started looking for jobs on LinkedIn at that point, at the very beginning of 2017. And I think within 15 minutes of me sending out that first email, I got a response from this company saying, hey, we like your resume and we want to interview you. So it was such a quick turnaround, and kind of like, okay, well, now I got to go drive down to Indianapolis and do an interview. Pretty much running all over the place. And so did that interview, and I think the what I was basing my interview around was that I would start probably more towards the middle of the year when my lease was up. But as a lot of companies they don't want you to wait that long. They want you to start really quickly. So I was like, okay, I guess I got to drop everything and just move down. And so I think it took me, I had to move all my stuff from Northwest Indiana down to Indianapolis in about 2.5 days. So that took about 3 truckloads of cars worth of stuff to move down
Right,
here. So,
right.
but,
Well, so
but
obviously you felt pretty good about the job, that you were willing to say, okay, even though that, I'd like to make it to the end of the lease. Did you have to pay any fee for breaking the lease and that kind of thing?
Yes, I believe there was a fee I had to pay in the
Yeah,
lease.
yeah,
At the
yeah.
end there, most of the apartments have
Right, right.
that. I
But
think this one was a little bit more stringent than some of the other. It's all based on the companies that
sure,
own the
sure.
apartments. But I made it through.
Right, right.
That was probably the more stressful financial time I've had, but it's going well now. I mean, I've gotten
Sure.
all my student loans paid off, which
Oh,
has been
nice. Excellent.
a huge
Yeah,
relief for
yeah.
me, and cars paid off. So it's going well now. So
Nice, nice. Well, let me ask you this about making the change. So there's obviously something that attracts you to the first company, that you
mhm.
accept a job, and like you were mentioning, it can be a lot of things. It can be location, it can be the title and the responsibilities that go with the work. It could be the salary. I mean, there's a lot of things, but obviously there was enough there for you to say, yeah, I'll do this work. And then at some point you decide, and it's not what it seemed to be, on first glance. But that doesn't happen. That transformation from being interested to less interested, I won't say disinterested, but less interested, isn't something that happens overnight.
No,
Um,
no, it's not.
so I mean, talk a little bit about uh, maybe like the internal struggles, because you sit there and you can say to yourself, geez, I've only been on the job 6 months. I'm not not happy, but I'm going to do the 2 years, as someone suggested, that stick with it for 2 years. But there had to be little things along the way that, so when you had put your 2 years in and you felt like I gave it a good effort, you still said, no, it's time to change.
Oh
So
yeah,
yeah,
I
so what sort of was happening for you that you were going, maybe this isn't right, for me?
well, I think it was just I think the biggest thing, and again, there were a lot of factors
Sure.
outside of the job that led to this decision as well.
Right,
But
right.
I think the biggest thing was just, this is just not and this is just not what I want to be doing. And I just
Professionally.
professionally,
Right,
exactly.
right. Okay.
And it's and and there were certainly points where it was more interesting than not. I mean, there were some projects that were definitely more involved than what when I nest when I was first introduced to this Porsche
Right,
job.
right.
I honestly didn't exactly know at the very beginning what the work fully entailed.
Right,
So
right.
I so that kind of learning curve really kind of was the first 6 months for me. It was just kind of understanding, okay, what am I doing here? What does this job fully entail? And I think that learning curve kind of continued on for a while, and it kept getting, obviously it keeps getting tougher and tougher because you gain experience and your employer starts giving you more responsibility and
Right,
everything. And I
right.
definitely think that started to happen. um it just, again, it got to the point where I was just like, this is not what I want to be doing for the
Right,
rest of my life.
right, right.
And if I'm going to make a change, the earlier I do it in life, the better. But again, even before that 2 year mark, I kind of was trying to give myself that thought, you still haven't gone that 2 years.
Right.
You can't quit right now. You've got to just kind of grind it out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Things change. Things could definitely get better.
Yep.
And in some ways they did, and a lot of ways, which led to my decision. They didn't. So
Sure.
it just came to the point where I decided that it's time to move on. It's
Right.
time to make that change. And I'm
Right.
glad I did. I
Right.
definitely enjoyed a lot more
Right.
down here than I did back in Northwest Indiana.
Yeah.
So
So let me ask you one last question, and then let's talk about what you're doing now. What would the 2020 Nick tell the 2014 Nick, that that hey, think about this, because here's one thing, and I think you would agree with this, especially in your circumstance. You probably didn't ask some questions of the company that you would have today, having now been through employment with two different people. You'd probably consider some things more important and other things less important in the decision making. So it, if 2020 Nick could talk to 2014 Nick, what would 2020 say? What might be the one or two things that you would tell yourself, hey, make sure you ask about, or whatever it might be.
sure. I would say maybe, I don't want to say this, and I'm trying to, maybe don't settle. I think maybe that's one
Okay.
thing that I think I was at that point just desperate to find something. So
Okay.
it kind of got to the point where it was just almost grab the first thing that you've got an opportunity for and
Yeah.
go with it, which
Yeah.
in some ways wasn't a bad thing, because I think I definitely learned a lot in my position that I had, and I'm
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
glad that I made that journey that I did to this
Sure.
point. But at the same time, and I think this maybe applies with me when choosing schools, not that I'm regretting picking Valpo at all, but don't be afraid to go farther than what you feel comfortable with. Because I know when I was picking schools, one of the big factors was I want to be close to home, and I want to be able to have that close proximity, which in some ways was great. But at the same time, I also feel like I I feel like I've grown more when I've been further away
Away.
from home. So um,
Sure.
and I think that's definitely been the case. I mean, again, not that it's the same thing. I grew when I was Valpo. I've grown in both jobs since I've started working, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I definitely feel my growth getting stronger as I've been living on my own down here
Right.
for the past
Excellent.
3+ years now. So
Where, and not that I know a whole lot about Indianapolis, because I've been down there, a few times. North, south, east, west. What part of the city? Where
I'm
would?
living in the north east suburbs.
Okay.
I'm like right on the border of Fishers and Noblesville.
Okay.
Fishers is kind of a nicer high end
Right.
suburb, and Noblesville is a little more um, middle of the road, I would call it. So I'm
Sure.
like right on that borderline.
Sure.
It's about a it's about a 30-minute commute from downtown to where I'm currently living right
Oh,
now. So
okay.
I'm uh, I'm thinking about maybe moving down to the south side towards the end of the year when my lease is up, to kind of shorten the commute just a little bit. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, that's definitely on the table right now. But other than that, I'm definitely happy where I'm at. I love that area of the suburbs. It's definitely a nice booming area right now. A lot of
Sure.
construction going on, a lot of development taking place. So it's really nice.
Excellent. So you've got a new position. What's your title? Uh,
I'm currently a project engineer at
okay.
Lynch
And
Harrison
has
Brumleve.
anybody been hired since you, or are you low man
Yes.
on the totem pole?
No, there have been 5 or 6. I'm trying to think. There's like 5 or 6
Okay.
guys that have been.
Okay.
There's been a big growth movement um, since I think I was probably towards the beginning of this growth movement in our office, where we've had a lot of young guys come through. Like I was saying, about I think there's like 5 guys that have been hired since I've been here, which a couple of them are a little higher, have more experience than I have. There's
Okay.
at least one senior engineer that's been hired since I've been here, but there have been a few guys right out of school that have been hired as well that have started here as well. So it's nice.
So, and I'm not familiar with the firm. So, regional, national, international, where does
Yeah,
it fall?
it's pretty regional. It's
Okay.
I'd say 90 to 95% of the work we do is in Indiana.
Okay. Okay.
I think there's a few. We do a few projects in the Midwest, I would say, outside of Indiana, but for the most part, most of our projects are in Indiana.
Okay. Okay. Do you get an opportunity to go to the job sites while they're under construction?
Yeah, most of the jobs we do site visits for. I'd say per the code, it's not necessarily required, but it's recommended that the structural engineer goes out and does periodic site visits to the job sites. I don't think we do too many category 4 buildings. We do a few hospital projects that I think require it per the code, but for the most part, yes, most of the jobs I've done, I've been going out to the job site, and this one, probably my biggest job to date, I was out of the job site probably like 20 times, seeing it under construction, which, boy, that's a conversation I could go on for a while about
Yeah.
the stresses and
Well, actually, I mean, I think with everybody I've spoken with, there's been good topics for follow-up conversations, and I think that would be one I'd like to have with you of when you started to go on the job site and knowing things that you designed, like what did you learn that you brought back in and incorporated into subsequent design work that you've done, because I know that's
yes,
always a big deal. So
yes,
mostly steel structure stuff or concrete
yeah.
structures, or which, how's it breaking out for you?
For me personally, I've been doing mostly composite steel structures, so composite floor slab on steel frame. I've done a little bit of wood design. We have a big wood design portion of our firm that we have like 5 guys that are pretty much strictly wood design guys. I've been doing mostly steel structures to this point.
Do you get asked about what you'd like to work on, or is it more or less the boss comes and says, I want you to work on this project?
Yeah, it's been mostly the boss kind of telling me
Okay.
what I've been responsible with, and we're kind of going through a transition period right now where kind of our 2 owners are at the point where they're getting ready to retire or just starting to be retired, which for my one boss who claims he retired a year ago has definitely not retired. So, but no, he's a great guy. I really enjoy working with him, and but no, they've kind of given me the direction of where they need me the most right now, and I'm kind of just going from there. But yeah, most of the projects in this office, I would say, are steel and wood structures.
Right.
We do a little bit with precast, or I'm sorry, not precast, post-tension.
Okay.
Post-tension, but that's that's pretty much the laydown of what our office does work-wise.
Okay. So we'll put a disclaimer somewhere in the podcast, depending on how you want to answer this next question, for your employer to turn down the volume or something like that. For your first job, and I'd say for this one as well, what scared you a little bit? So you're coming out of college, and boy, that first job, and you're showing up on the first day, and even if all you're doing on the first day is filling out employment paperwork and stuff, the next day you're going to sit down at the desk, and somebody's going to set something in front of you and say, we need you to do this, and
Right.
And 2 years later, you're back into that mode, and I'd say, short enough period of time that there's probably still some self doubts or questions or what, you know, I mean,
Definitely.
that's being a human, right? So,
Exactly.
so what kind of scared you a little bit about, and I'm going to say this, if anybody's listening and says, "Oh, I never was scared," you're just lying, you know? So, right.
I think just the mentality that I wanted to be a good representation of the company, both
Right.
internally and externally. Internally, I wanted to feel like I could handle the responsibilities that were put in front of me, and I didn't want to. I did, I was afraid to ask questions at the beginning, and then I got to the period where I felt like I was asking way too many questions. And now I kind of have that happy balance in the middle of
Right.
asking the right questions at the right times. Um, and then externally has kind of been the bigger worry for me is I want to make sure that I'm representing the company well externally to contractors and architects, etc.
Sure.
In that I want to make sure that I feel like I'm being a good representation of what we want, what we're trying to do as a structural firm, and
Sure.
make sure that I'm providing the right information, providing all the what basically my higher ups would provide to
Yeah.
them.
So how do you feel about those things today? You know, now that you're 6 years of total employment, do you feel very comfortable now?
I'm still getting there. I think it's still a long learning curve.
Hmm.
I think there's still it takes I think I think someone told me it takes like 5 years at the same job for you to really be super comfortable with what you're doing. And I think I'm getting there. I'm still there's still times where I'm a little more nervous than not, but at the
Hmm.
same time, I definitely feel like my knowledge has grown a lot, and I'm at the point where I'm hopefully becoming more reliable, both internally and externally,
Right,
for
right.
being up to the job, essentially.
Well, and I would suspect that uh, scenarios that repeat themselves because something comes up, you know, and you've seen it before, that with each time you have that experience again, you're just the comfort level of being able to respond and you know exactly how to answer the email, the phone call, or whatever is helping you build that comfort.
That it's been that's funny because the project I was just talking about being the one that really kind of was the big one that made me nervous. I just did the second building for that one, which was very similar in a lot of ways. So it it was very much a period of I take everything that went wrong with the first building, which
Hmm.
a lot of things were not well with the first building, both within my control and not within my control.
Right, right.
But but just that how big of a learning opportunity that was, and that kind of was the time. That was the project I feel was the kind of the clicking point for me, where I understand what I need to be doing in this job and what my responsibilities are and what amount of detail I need to be showing and what I need to be looking out for and
Right,
everything. So
right.
it's I think everyone at some point hits that project where they're kind of like, man, if I could go through that again, I would do so much of that differently. And
Hmm.
fortunately for me, I kind of got that opportunity on the second building, and
Sure.
fingers crossed everything
Right, right.
goes well with that one. It's probably going to break ground in June or July or something like that. But
Okay, okay,
yeah, we'll see what happens. Hopefully
okay.
the RFI account is below triple digits this time.
So this raises a couple questions for me. This one will probably be quicker to answer. Um, have you worked on anything where you're able to go drive by it and point to it and say, "I worked on that project," or have things been, you know, like not as accessible?
There's one project I can think of that's pretty close to my office, within about a 10-minute distance from my office that I know I
Okay,
can.
right. You can drive by and say, "That's me."
Yep, that
Ah,
that's I boy, I'm trying to think if I'm hoping that that one's done by now, but the last time I drove by it, it was still under
still,
construction.
but how does it make you feel?
oh, it makes me feel accomplished. It makes
Yeah.
me feel like I'm making a difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm doing what I was meant to
To
do,
do.
and it's a good feeling.
Yep. Let me ask you one other thing, and then we're getting close to time. You're a student at Valpo, you know, and this is again one of those things for anybody, but it's always good for, you know, current students or prospective civil students to hear another person say it. You know, it helps. You're learning structural analysis and design at Valpo. You know, I forget Hagenberger, either he or I was,
You taught
you
that
know,
one.
yep. And, you know, it's homework and it's exams, and you're just trying to make it to the end of the semester, right? But now you're working. Do you remember the moment or some part of a project where you went, oh, that's what that equation is for? Oh, now I understand what, you know, lateral torsional buckling is. I mean, do you recall one of those sort of aha moments where something that was in the classroom
You
popped
know,
up and
it's funny because I'd love to say that definitely for me, it was all in the classroom, but I think a lot of that honestly happened when I was studying for the PE exam back in
okay,
2018. A
okay,
lot of those going through those equations and kind of understanding, oh, that's what this, now I'm getting the concepts.
yeah,
Now it's kind of
yeah,
like reinforcing that in my mind, like,
right,
okay,
right,
now that I've seen this in real life and now that I'm doing this in real life, this is all making sense because everything in school is theoretical, and having that direct application in the real world kind of has been nice to understand some things and then see it on paper again from what I learned in school and go like, wow, that's what that was going on. And like,
So,
so
you know, one of the things for me that, and I don't know if you felt this way at all, but when I've had those sorts of moments over my career, I always would say to myself later on, why was it so hard when I was taking this in school? Because it seems so easy today, you know? And I was like, why did I struggle so much? I don't know,
it,
did you
I,
have any of those kind of
oh yeah,
feelings?
yeah, it's honestly, it's a lot of the beginning civil engineering courses that I'm kind of like looking back to, the statics and the mechanics classes I'm looking kind of back to. I'm like, this seems so simple now. Why did I struggle so badly, or as badly as I did in those courses? I didn't do
Yeah,
terrible in those courses, but I definitely feel like I could have done better in those
yeah,
courses.
yeah, yeah. It's
Knowing everything I
something.
know today, I feel like I should be able to get an A in those classes, no problem.
Right. Well, let me ask you one other thing because we're pretty much out of time now. Um, what are you hoping for in the next, you know, 5-ish, 10 years for you? Are you thinking that you'll you know, like at least geographically stay in the Indianapolis area? Do you want to maybe, like you said, go someplace else and, you know, not be afraid to go someplace else? Uh, what's kind of in the back of your mind for the future? So we'll tell the employer, you know, please turn down the audio during this portion. Yeah,
I'm happy here.
sure.
I feel good. I feel good in this area. It's a great city. It feels like an up and coming city. There's a lot to do. I've got a nice job here. I'm I'm very happy at the moment.
Nice, excellent.
I'm kind of hoping that this is the place that I'm staying for in the long term. Of course, things change, and
Right.
there's definitely a lot of uncontrollables like we're facing right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But as of right now, I'm happy where I'm at. I'm thrilled I've found this place
Yeah.
kind of after my first go around, and
Yeah.
I'm glad that I made that decision. I'm glad I took that chance to move on, and I think it's paid off.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you know, it's got to feel good too to know that somebody came and spotted, you know, your resume on LinkedIn, and said, hey, this is the person that we need on our team. That's got to feel pretty good too.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, sir, we got to call it a day here. This has been great. And we keep in touch, email and such. And so it's not like we haven't conversed since we both departed Valpo. But I think this might be the one time I was there visiting. We got together for lunch.
Yes.
But we haven't had a chance to do a face-to-face like this for a while. So that's been great. Actually, I've been looking forward to having you. I was hoping that you would say, yeah, I'll do it.
No, it's been great.
To catch up. Yep. So
I'm glad,
I've been
glad
excited.
to catch up. Absolutely.
Yep. So I hope you had fun on our Let's Be Civil podcast. You'll have to check out the other people and see what kind of great company you're in as part of the guests that we've got here. So, and I'll get back in touch with you to follow up, and we'll let a little time go by here and then see what's changed in your career
Sure.
as you move forward. So I look forward to that too. And
Good
just
deal.
remember when grad school starts creeping in the back of your head, you know who to call.
You got it. Got it.
Take it easy.
Take it easy, John.
Yep. Have a good rest of your day.
Yes, you too.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.